Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just making sure everyone makes it through from the lobby, but welcome to our MGA Professional Optics today with Azur Technology. I'm Manveen, I'm the Learning and Insights Manager here at the MGA and delighted to welcome you to this session this afternoon. Before I do hand over to David and Katya, I'm just going to run through a few housekeeping points. I'm sure many of you are familiar with these, but always good just to have a quick reminder. You'll notice that your camera and mic aren't enabled at the moment, and you're unable to effectively turn the mic on and camera on. This is by design. Please don't panic. There's nothing wrong with your Teams. It's just to ensure that we're maximising the bandwidth for the presentation and minimising disruption. We'll still ensure that you can get the most out of today because we will enable these as we get to Q&A at the end. So please don't worry. We also are recording the session, and a recording of the session will be shared following the webinar to all those that are registered. We do also ask that there is no AI note-taking tools being used, just so we don't have permission of the audience to enable these directly, but we have got the note-taking tool enabled as part of the recording, so if anyone does want the transcript, we can share that as well. And naturally, we do encourage and welcome questions. You can add them to the chat, which I'm sure you're familiar with if you've used Teams. But we've also got a Q&A function enabled, and there is the opportunity to post an anonymous question if you would like to. Obviously, if you're looking to ask maybe a question that directly relates to you and don't want to be known, you can create that post and question in there as well. It's just next to the chat option. And then finally, if you feel this supports your learning and development, you can add it to your CPD log, so please do so. That leaves me to introduce today's session with Azur Technology, scaling the modern MGA with unified operations. And I'm going to hand over to David to get us started.
Thank you so much, and hello, everybody. We're coming to you today from Azur Technology. If you don't know us, if you haven't met us at an MGA conference or around in any other event, we are a technology provider for MGA-specific operations platform called MGA Connect. We're going to dive in a bit as far as where we help people with unifying their operations with our MGA Connect product, but today we're going to talk through what it means to be scaling the modern MGA with unified operations. My name is David Fox. I'm the product marketer here at Azur Technology. I'm here with my co-presenter and colleague, Katya. Katya, if you'd like to introduce yourself quickly.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Yes, my name's Katya Vias. I am Chief Product Officer at Azur Technology. And yes, I'm looking after MGA Connect and excited to be here with you today.
Awesome. So before we dive into our presentation today, where we're going to talk through the four different myths about disconnected systems, data unification, and AI, I have a question for everybody here, and a poll is going to appear in your purview of this presentation. And we invite you all to give an answer to this question, which is that if a capacity partner called you and asked for a complete picture of one of your accounts, every quote version, email thread, document, and renewal note, how long would that realistically take your MGA today to pull together? Feel free to give an answer that is open and honest about what you're sort of dealing with today. And this is sort of a temperature check across all the MGAs that are present here today on what the average time it takes to pull all this together looks like today. We're going to give it about 10 or 20 seconds and close the poll to see what our results look like. So feel free to throw your answers in now. All right. I think we can close the poll. If it looks like we have a good amount of answers, can we pull up the results to see what everybody answered?
So we've got 20% that have come in and said minutes, it's all in one place. 33% saying a few hours of digging, a day or more across several people is come up with a 40% response rate. And it depends entirely on who's in the office at 7%.
Yeah, so as you can see, it's sort of a mixed bag of how long it takes the average MGA or the average team to pull all of this together, anything between a few days and a few minutes. And I'm sure that the difference between a lot of those is the difference between how unified and accessible all of your data is across your different policies and your different products. So Today, we're going to start by talking through how the modern MGA is being pulled in 4 different directions. Right now, it's on the modern MGA in order to find out ways to scale more efficiently. In a softening market and a more competitive market, as more entrants enter this MGA field and it gets more competitive day to day, scaling efficiently is becoming a requirement. And doing more with less headcount is becoming an underlying need for an MGA to scale most efficiently and bring their business and their book of business to the next level. So this is one direction in which MGAs are being pulled today. Another is in improving your underwriting. Sharpening that risk selection and your pricing with evidence from your own book is a catalyst to securing more capacity in the future and allows your MGA to be more successful in underwriting premium rather than not having that purview into your own book that allows you to make better underwriting decisions tomorrow. They're also being required to satisfy capacity partners and the rising carrier expectations on things like data quality and reporting discipline. It's not uncommon nowadays that carriers are asking for real-time insights into product performance, and this is something that is increasingly challenging for MGAs to find solutions for and to report consistently. And this is another direction in which MGAs long-term need to figure out a solution that works best for themselves and their carrier partners. And finally, making better use of AI. Everybody knows that you have an AI pilot in your pocket. Everybody's been running new ways to use AI within their MGA, but turning that AI mandate into use cases that actually deliver value is becoming increasing pressure on every business across every industry, but in particular on MGAs to take these AI pilots out of pilot mode and into full production where they can actually make use for your business and help you scale and grow your MGA and your products. So 4 myths that are holding the typical MGA back from accomplishing their goals in any of these directions are right here. And these are what we're going to go through today, one by one, and talk about why there's a view in that direction, why this myth persists, and how we're sort of going to dispel that myth through different solutions and reframing of the problem that allows your MGA to make full use of your data in a unified workflow. So the first myth we're going to be jumping into is that fragmentation is just an efficiency problem. So everybody likely knows the pains of rekeying your information across different systems, throwing it into a spreadsheet here, throwing it into your web-based PAS there, throwing it into a workbench, and rekeying all that information consistently over different systems and duplicating records creates all this administrative churn that at face value feels just like a productivity problem. It's annoying. It takes a bit more time for our team to do, but it's a survivable problem. But the reality is, particularly in the age of AI, the real cost is what the business, the MGA, cannot see, control, or improve due to that lack of visibility across different systems. So if you have a PAS that can't speak well to your underwriting workbench and an underwriting workbench that doesn't speak well to your submissions tool, the insights, visibility, and reporting across those siloed solutions degrades and disallows your MGA from making the full use of that data that gives you the insights and the information you need to improve the way you underwrite and scale your business going forward. So fragmentation doesn't just slow the MGA down, it actually caps what your MGA can actually become. And what does this fragmented system look like? It's often a little bit invisible, but if you look closely across your systems, you'll see the inconsistencies that really trip up your ability to generate insights that are confident and consistent across your different solutions. So if you have a policy admin system, an underwriting workbench, and a rating tool, all with different vendors, you can see here that across different fields that should be necessarily the same, there are key differences in how they're either phrased in the field name themselves or in how they were recorded when they were keyed into that system. So the different ways that they're named, the different fields that you're looking to pull out of your different tools that you're using in your workflow becomes exponentially harder when you have to go in and change what that field name is and change what that value looks like for each individual system. Pointing an AI at this would be a mess because it wouldn't necessarily know which one of these is the whole truth that it should follow and generate an output from for you to go and use as insight for your MGA. So having consistent field names, having consistent naming schema when you're keying in information across all of your different systems and ensuring they speak to each other is a key difference between what this fragmented system you're looking at actually enables your MGA to do. And this fragmentation hides 3 key blind spots for the average MGA. There's a blind spot in your underwriting insight where your decisions and your quote history live in inboxes and spreadsheets, so you're not able to actually learn from your own book and make better decisions going forward when you're underwriting. A second blind spot is into your portfolio visibility, where things like aggregation, appetite drift, and product performance can slip and not be noticed until a month end or even year end review when you're actually pulling the data together across your different systems and seeing when and where this occurred. When you have better real-time access and better visibility into your data at any given time across those different systems, you have full visibility of your portfolio. Finally, the third blind spot is capacity reporting. When bordereau is assembled by hand, it's often late and can be inconsistent. And that carrier confidence erodes with every cycle, particularly when tech-enabled MGAs are continuing to use new solutions, just like MGA Connect, in order to improve their reporting workflows and deliver more value in form of data and reporting on their products to their carrier partners. So all of these three blind spots are where fragmentation hides behind and shows you that it's not just a productivity and time problem, it's really a problem as to what your MGA can see and how usable the data you collect on a day-to-day basis can be for your business. So we're going to jump into myth 2, and to do that, I'm going to pass it back over to Katya.
Thanks very much, David. So yes, myth number 2, our PAS is the only source of truth we need. So this is an interesting one, and like many of the great myths, it's half true. So for many of you, and not all PAS systems are made equal. So for many of you, you could see in the poll earlier, your PAS can be your only source of truth, or maybe it is your only source of truth. So it's sort of half true. But what we need to think about is, thinking about what the difference is between what's on the left and what's on the right. And your PAS is often a record of what's happened rather than what you learned. And the majority of your underwriting effort can produce data. If you haven't designed your foundations properly, it can produce data that just evaporates. So there's a story that a lot of people tell us and probably feels familiar to you, which is that of an underwriter, a really good underwriter at your business who hands in their notice, they're going somewhere else. They spent 8 years with your business, and then suddenly everyone realizes that half of the data is in their head, possibly, but often a lot of it's just in their inbox. And that's things like the broker relationships, the decline reasons, renewal. Not all of it is in the PAS, because the PAS wasn't necessarily designed to hold all of that data. So when they walk out the door, all of the institutional memory walks with them. And that's not really just a filing problem. That's your whole business. Your whole business is your pricing institution. It's intuition. It's all walking out the door. So that's something that you really need to think about when thinking about your foundations and building your PAS. The next slide. Thanks, David. So how we'd like to reframe, and David was talking a little bit about reframing the problem and reframing how we think about things, is system of record versus the system of operations. So the distinction is that the system of record is really thinking about what's happened, as I said. So what's your policy, your transactions? It's just really thinking about the current data. But if you look on the right at your connected operating system, which is how we're starting to think about things and how we want you to think about things, is you've got all of your data in the same place. So you've got your submissions, your risks, your policy, documents, ratings, renewals, reports. In a lot of MGAs, not all, each of those live in a different place. So you've got a portal, an inbox, a spreadsheet, a rating tool, and then the PAS. And each one works well in isolation. But the problem is that there isn't really a great connective tissue between all of them. And nobody really owns that connective tissue either. So what you want is your PAS, and we're not telling you to rip out your PAS, but that stays as the book of record. And the operating layer becomes your book of knowledge and your book of learning. Good. Can I go to the next slide? Thank you. Which brings me on nicely to myth number 3, because the distinction between book of record and book of knowledge is about to matter more than ever. The world is changing. Everyone knows that. Lots of CEOs are going out there and talking about the AI strategy and wanting to just add AI on top of what already exists. And I'm sure that will be familiar to a lot of you. But that's myth number 3. So adding AI on top is just going to create more problems for you. So This slide is really talking through and thinking through why that is a problem. And we're talking about different fragmented systems. So you've got your broker portal, your email inbox, your workbench, your PAS. All of these are different systems, perhaps. And then you decide to add an underwriting copilot somewhere there. And you can see here you've got different premiums for various different reasons. You might have agreed one at one point and then decided at another point to change it. We know that so much of underwriting is about relationships and back and forth and negotiation. And so you might have different premiums everywhere. The underwriting copilot doesn't really care about that. It's just going to read the systems and come back with a really confident answer that could be wrong, could be right. We don't know. Just because the way that AI works is it's not going to decide whether it's not going to tell you that the data is wrong. It's just going to decide for you. It's going to give you a really confident answer. And it gives it in a really confident voice as well. So you could fall into the trap of just deciding that was the right answer. There's a really famous cautionary tale from Air Canada. Some of you might have heard about this. So a passenger, they put a passenger chatbot on their website that was doing support. And a passenger asked about bereavement fares. The bot decided to fabricate a refund policy. It just didn't exist. And the passenger relied on it, and the airline refused to pay. So it went to tribunal, and the tribunal ruled that the airline was liable for what its own AI said. The company tried to argue that the chatbot was a separate legal entity responsible for its own actions. Understandably, tribunal didn't buy that, and Air Canada had to pay. So the problem wasn't the AI. The AI didn't fail. The foundation failed. It didn't have the right data. Didn't have the right data to call from, and so it just delivered a failure faster and more persuasively. Next slide, please, David. Okay, so there are two different failure modes that we've come up with here. So the first is partial intelligence. So this is kind of speaking to what I was talking about earlier. AI can only reason over what it can reach, and underwriters will spot gaps immediately. So here's the first one, partial intelligence. Look at this diagram. The AI is connected to one slice of the life cycle. It can only reason with what it can reach. It answers from one slice of the life cycle, never the whole account. And the output sounds confident, but it's only built on partial context. What underwriters are really good at is being professionally trained skeptics. So they can spot the thing that doesn't add up. And that's literally the job. So you can't get a confident wrong answer past a group of people whose entire job is not believing things and to question things. And so the first time the co-pilot misses a decline that they remember or quotes a renewal without knowing the account nearly lapsed last year, they stop trusting it. In my experience, an underwriter gives a new tool only 2 chances. So trust in an AI is spent in seconds and rebuilt in quarters. Which brings me on to the next slide, which is the second failure mode, which is integration drag. So you can see here a kind of spaghetti diagram. Every new AI use case becomes an integration project across systems. So if you're bringing in submission ingestion, and then you decide to bring in triage, and then you decide to bring in a renewal AI, every single one of those connections needs to have integrations across your different systems. So you can see that starts to get really messy if you've got lots of different AI talking to lots of different systems. And so pilots often end up stalling in the plumbing before they ever actually prove any value. I'm sure lots of you will have seen the research into how many AI pilots actually fail. Something like 95% never actually prove any value. And that's really the trap that we really don't want to fall into. So the 5% who win, or the 5 to 10% who win on AI pilots, they don't necessarily have better AI. The AI tools in general, everyone has access to them. They just have better foundations, they have better plumbing, and they have better idea of what problem they're actually trying to solve. We go to the next slide because we're on to a fun quiz. So yes, is your MGA AI ready? So we're now going to pull up some questions. Hopefully Manvi will be able to do that. And you can answer these and get through them. How are we doing, Mandine?
We're doing well. We've got we've got a couple of responses. I think there is 5 questions in total, so you just need to press the right arrow to carry on through. We've got a couple of responses so far, so we'll give it another 10-20 seconds.
And while people are wrapping up on answering those poll questions, just a bit of a plug here that these questions come straight from a white paper that we've recently published called Built on Sand. The idea and the premise of it is how you need to build your data foundation very securely in order to launch your AI strategy in a scalable and efficient manner. We will talk a bit more about it later, but just wanted to bring that up in case there are any questions or if anybody would like to see that white paper later on in the session. Nveen's going to help us share a link to it so that you have access to that white paper and can see these questions again with all the information that comes along with it.
Absolutely. We've got a couple of responses come through, so I'm just going to close the poll and hopefully that's dropped into the chat, but if not, I'm just going to run through for question 1 where we talk about data hands-off. We had 23% when we kind of aggregate that say yes, it flows through untouched. 77% say no or not sure. So that's for question 1. For question 2 about field consistency, again, yes for 29%, or 29% for yes, sorry, and then no, not sure for 71%, about each system having its own version, so it's 71% there. For the feedback loop, again, similar response. The loop closes itself is 29%. No, not sure, also at 71%. Same result for question 4, so 29% saying yes with that integration fragility, 71% saying no, not sure. Probably the same that are saying no to ones previously, finding that no is continuing, but slightly different to historical depth actually. We've got 57% saying yes, and then 43% saying no, not sure. The history is scattered or gone.
Yeah, really interesting, and some promising signs there actually, especially on the last one, to see that people can actually link to underwriting decisions from 3 years ago, majority of people. And actually higher than I was expecting on some of the others as well. So we've got definitely some good progress within the industry, which is definitely a trend we're seeing as well, actually. Shall we go to the next slide? Thank you. Great. Okay, so what does AI-ready data actually mean? And this is kind of unglamorous, but I guess the important stuff. One normalized data model, so every system speaking the same language about the same objects. And you can see that from the quiz results, that's definitely not happening everywhere. Full lifecycle coverage, so submission through renewal, not just what was bound, and making sure you really end-to-end understand where the data's going. Trusted deduplicated values. So one answer to, if you remember in one of the previous slides, one answer to what is Acme's premium everywhere. The data is the same everywhere. Documents tied to the record. So loads of documents, very, very document heavy industry insurances. Everything is tied to the record. So files, emails, and evidence connected to the account, not a shared drive. And governed access. So data AI can query safely with permissions and an audit trail. Really crucially, an audit trail. The thing about this is, and that's interesting about this, is actually there's no AI in here anywhere. What this is really an operations project. And that's really good news because it means that you don't have to go out and go shopping right now for the AI tool of choice. You have to think about really operational discipline, and you can start that, today, tomorrow, if you want to, because operational discipline is something that you can do internally and really understand what is the problem that you're trying to solve and what is the AI going to do to help you. Right, thank you. Okay, so we've talked about fragmented systems. We talked about what AI can do to talk to your systems. This is a unified foundation. So if you've got one unified operating system with one data model and a normalized system of record that takes everything into it, so submissions, risks, policies, documents, ratings, renewals, reports, all feeding into one unified operating system. Then AI becomes modular, so it can sit on top and you can use it for whatever you need it to do. You don't have to do a blanket AI project that touches your whole system. You can start with submission intake, for example. You can start with rules-based triage or portfolio insights. And you can do that one at a time and de-risk the project massively. So what we're saying here is that one unified operating system really does beat fragmented stack for AI readiness, but also for your business operations. And great, so that's it on myth number 3. I'm going to hand back over to David to myth number 4.
Thank you, Katya. So the last myth we're going to cover today is that unification means ripping and replacing. Now, the word unify, whenever you're talking about data or you're talking about your systems, always sounds like this mega migration. It's going to cost your MGA a ton. It's going to disrupt business. It's putting yourself on the line by suggesting such a big move in your systems or your data provider. So teams, and on top of that, teams do have systems that they like today. It's tough to tell an underwriter to change their behavior. It's tough to tell any worker to change their daily behavior by using a new system. And they have data that they're afraid to move. There's always that file in that folder that nobody touches that you're worried that if you end up moving to a unified system, that gets lost along the way and nobody ends up being able to find it. So these concerns are why this myth continues to persist, because the safest feeling decision is no decision. And when you make no decision, that fragmentation within your workflow and within your tech stack continues to compound. So the way I want us to reframe unification today is that it's a decision about the data and the workflow layer of your day-to-day, not every single system. The idea is keeping what works today and connecting it to one model of the account, that central source of truth that you want to pull back to every single time that you're pointing AI or any type of insight generation towards. You only want to replace where legacy is genuinely blocking your operating model today. If it's disallowing you to scale, if it's disallowing your visibility into underwriting performance and how you can update it or improve it over time, those types of systems take priority in being shifted and unified within one workflow platform than any of the ones that today don't disrupt your operational workflow or your operating model. So when it comes to unifying your different operations and data, there's sort of 3 different ways that you can do this, and they all have their own positives, but they all have their own individual trade-offs as well. So the fastest and least disruptive of these options is to just connect what already exists today, finding the ways that your different systems have API connections or different integrations that allow you to have one system talk to another across your tech stack. Now, this is what allows your data layer to begin to exist across a unified platform, but you still have to maintain every single system and every single integration across those systems when you use this method of unifying. So this is a great quick way to start seeing your data live in one place and be consistent across different systems. But nonetheless, it takes a lot of engineering work. It takes a lot of operational work in order to keep this up and be sure that those integrations stay exactly where they are, and that if a vendor changes their documentation and their schema one day, you have somebody paying attention to that and is able to update it before things start to break down. The second method for unifying is consolidating. So this is unifying workflow by workflow onto a common platform. Now, the positive here is that value starts to land incrementally. Maybe you start out by connecting your submissions intake and your underwriting workbench, or your underwriting workbench and your policy admin system. You want to start with whatever small pilot you can begin to see value with, and then start building piece by piece onto that platform to unify your workflow across all of your different operational needs throughout the day. Now, this is difficult in the sense that it needs very good sequencing discipline. So what this means is knowing exactly which workflows to pull into that common platform at any given time without disrupting business. If there's a large project going on in the underwriting team, maybe we don't want to necessarily look at shifting over the underwriting workbench quite yet. If the finance team is knee deep in it, maybe we leave our finance and billing system alone so that we can focus on a different part of our workflow to unify first and test first. So that good sequencing discipline allows you to create a project plan that creates incremental value and shows you what a unified workflow can do, but it takes good management and good timekeeping in order to run that project efficiently enough to create great outcomes. The final way to unify is to replace your entire system. This is, of course, the deepest and the cleanest fix because you are saying, we don't want this system anymore. We're going to completely replace it with this unified platform and start putting the workflows that don't work for us today onto one place. Now, this is a really high change cost, much higher than the other two options, and it requires a really great technical partner. So this is an investment both in your personal relationships and also in the investment itself into replacing these different systems from a finance perspective. So this is the easiest way to immediately fix the problems in your workflow and in your data fragmentation, but it comes with that trade-off of needing a really great partner and being willing to invest in that solution. Now I'll hand it back to Katja to close us out with a last few slides.
Great. Okay, so we talked a lot about myths. We talked a lot about how things are. And now we're going to talk a bit more about how to make it practical for you. So in the first 90 days, whichever approach you choose, this is a really good way for you to get going with your kind of operational change. So the first thing is to map out the truth. So before you buy anything, before you kind of go out there and look for the best tools, first map out where each of your objects is, where are the submissions, where are the quotes, where does everything live? That will be the first step because you can't unify if you haven't located everything yet. The second thing is to pick a beachhead. So pick one workflow, not the whole business, just one. And submission intake is often a really high value place to start. It's high leverage because it's the front door. So every piece of data in your business walks through that door. So if you structure it there, everything downstream can inherit clean data. So it's also where the pain is most visible. So I think there was an Accenture report recently that they survey underwriters every year, actually. And something like over a third of underwriting work is actually admin. Underwriters only spend probably about 30% of their time actually underwriting. A huge slice of that is on intake and data entry. So pick a beachhead. That one is probably a good place to start. And then prove one use case. So don't try and solve everything in one go. Ship one connected outcome. So triage on unified intake data. And then make sure you measure that, measure whether it's successful or not. And, you know, it's the old kind of saying, but fail fast and move on. And then expand object by object. So you can extend the model you created to identify these different issues you want to solve within the business, and extend the model to each workflow. Each addition will be cheaper than the last, just because you've done quite a lot of the thinking up front. So this is your kind of 90 days, really basic 90-day plan. And you know, whichever PaaS you're on, whichever systems you use, this will work for you. Great. Okay, and then another quiz. So there we go. Your new AI Copilot confidently gives 2 different premiums for the same account. What's the most likely culprit? And we'll give you 20 seconds to fill this up. How are we doing on responses?
Yes, some really good responses, actually. I've just been watching it fluctuate between the prompt wasn't specific enough and then several systems holding different versions of the truth. And then right at the end, we've had a few come in for the AI model isn't advanced enough. So we're sitting at, I'm just going to close it now, actually. So we're sitting at 5% saying the AI model isn't advanced enough. 35, the prompt wasn't specific enough. And then no one said underwriters need more AI training. And then 60% for several systems hold different versions of the truth. So yeah, an interesting one to actually watch live.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, you can make arguments for a few of these, I guess. But several systems holding different versions of the truth is definitely, you know, up there with one of the, you know, the biggest reasons that the AI Copilot will give you 2 different premiums for the same account, and that's what we were talking about earlier. But yeah, there's definitely some arguments to be made for some of the others as well. So yeah, really good answers. Great. And then just to close us out, so we talked about 4 myths today, and hopefully that's been informative, and hopefully we'll have some questions as well. These are the 4 truths. So fragmentation is not just an efficiency problem. It caps what you can see, prove, and control. And then the second one, a PaaS is our source of truth. So a PaaS records outcomes. Operations and analysis need a connected model of the whole account. And as I said earlier, you need book of knowledge, a book of learning in your business. So the third one, we can just add AI on top, probably the most productive one. AI is only as good as the data foundation we build underneath it. So a lot of what we talked today is really solid foundations, and you can see more of that in the white paper linked at the end of this. And then lastly, unification means rip and replace. So that can be scary. Ripping and replacing your technology is scary. People, businesses go through year-long projects to do migrations from one technology to another. And so don't be scared by that. Be optimistic about it, because unification is a layer, not a landfill, and keep what works and connect it rather than having to rip everything out and test things quickly. So yes, hopefully I have some questions now, but you can see here that we've got a white paper built on sand. So it's really talking about a lot of the things we've already spoken about today, but in more detail. So I'd really recommend you go and download that. It's a really great piece of work on AI readiness for MGAs, and you can find it on our website. Thanks very much.
Fantastic, thank you. I've just dropped the link to that white paper that's been mentioned by both David and Katja in the chat, so you can click on that. I'll also include it in the email out if anyone wants to refer to it again. Just a reminder that you've got the chat and Q&A to ask questions, and we're just enabling microphones and cameras. So please do, if you've got any questions, you can raise your hand or you can drop your question into either the chat or Q&A. So please let us know if you have any. Just have a quick look between them, see if we've got anything come through. No questions yet, but I think really interesting to see there's 4 myths and 4 truths. I think there's often a lot of misconceptions that do go out around AI. So this is your perfect opportunity. If you do want any clarification or feedback or thoughts from David and Katja, to please ask your questions today. I'm going to assume, if we don't have anything come through, that you've covered everything in great detail, which is absolutely the truth today.
Yeah, what
David
a compliment as a presenter. I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot there, to look at, and I really appreciate you both giving us this final slide in terms of the takeaways for our audience today and for our members. I think something has just popped into the Q&A. Is Unify also applicable to the claim space? Just a broad question there.
Yeah, so
you go.
Yeah, no, you can go, Katja. Go ahead. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Sure. we could both answer this. Yeah. So yeah, I think with MGAs, which is a space we're kind of working in, obviously claims is often outsourced to TPAs, and so there's a slightly different way of thinking about the data. But I think it is still applicable because you still want all your claims data feeding into the same foundation. And as we were talking about before, it doesn't mean you have to have everything on one system. Well, that kind of sometimes does help. But as long as your claims data is connecting into your foundational system, I think it's really helpful. So yes, I would say it's also applicable to claims data.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you for your question. Always good to clarify these things before we kind of wrap up. I haven't had any more questions come through, so I will assume no one has any at the moment, unless they do sneak through while we're wrapping up. I'm also just going to share in the chat a link to feedback. Your advice and feedback is always welcome. It helps us continue bringing great content like the session that David and Katja have delivered today about how to scale the modern MGA with that unified operations, something that's becoming more and more pertinent as as we evolve and as the industry grows. So please do get in contact. If anyone is looking to reach out to speak with David and Katja, please do. There's also an opportunity on that form if you'd like to hear more from them to do that. Otherwise, all that's left for me to say today is thank you to Azur Technology, David and Katja, and also know Callum behind the scenes has been helping with organising this. There is one more question that's just come through, so I will go back, but I'm also just going to say thank you to our members for coming along. We're going to circle back to this question, and which area within an MGA should AI be adopted first? So actually a really, really big question, I think, to wrap us up for today. So over to you both. I don't know who wants to take this one.
So I could take this. I would say this comes back to this slide here that we showed, which is being sure that you're mapping the truth before you go into any AI application. Whatever bottleneck is most pertinent or hindering your MGA operations most is where you'd likely want to look at to automate and to implement AI solutions in order to cure that bottleneck and to create a more efficient workflow across your MGA. So not to make it a cop-out sort of answer, but I really think it really depends on what your MGA's focus is and where internally you see the biggest stopgaps as far as your ability to either scale your underwriting ability, to scale your ability to report efficiently to your carriers. Whatever that bottleneck looks like to you is where you're going to want to invest in an AI solution most. So I would say do your due diligence internally to know what your data foundation looks like today, what your different systems within your tech stack look like today, and identify where those moments of hesitation or those places where your business is being hindered really exist across those different systems, because that's where you're going to want to invest AI in particular.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Really focus on what problem you're trying to solve. Don't just throw AI at the kind of fashionable place to throw it. Make sure that it works really well for your business and you understand what you're trying to solve for your business.
Thank you. And I'm just going to wait to see if there's any follow-up, but I absolutely love that phrase, what problem are you trying to solve first? So I think it's something we can apply to many different scenarios as well. But I think really, really important question to look at. If there's any follow-up on that, please let us know. But I hope that does help with your question. I'm just going to have a quick sweep for some more, or if there is any more. Right, I'm going to safely assume that we wrapped up all the questions there. So we've got some time back today. I know we're billed till 2, but I'm not going to make everyone sit here and wait for questions to come through. If anything does crop up for those that have joined us, or if anyone's listening to this via recording, like I said, if you've got questions, you can always reach out to me. More than happy to put you in touch with David and Katja, or on that feedback form, there's the opportunity to connect that way. We're here as a community to support one another, so there's no such thing as a silly question. So thank you again for joining us, and thank you to David and Katja and Callum, like I said, also here from Azur Technology and supporting the session, for your time today and for the webinar. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.